My name is Bill Oberlander. I'm the Managing Director for Communication, Marketing, and Events at the Robin Hood Foundation, and we are on Far West Chelsea in New York City. Well, the story that I had to share with the room was the fact that there was a woman who attended the feast last year. Her name was Jemana, and she was so moved by Mark's proposition. Mark's proposition was, Robin Hood is in the business of fighting poverty. But the truth is, after many, many years, people are getting tired about hearing that poverty hasn't been solved yet. So there's this thing called poverty fatigue, and it's affecting our donors. There's donor fatigue because people just, keep throwing money at it, and after a while, being an agent of change and fighting against something is exhausting. So Jemana reached out to Mark afterwards and said, I was so moved by that. I'm a strategic planner. Maybe we can crack the code and figure out what kind of the master brand strategy is for Robin Hood going forward. And I picked up the call, and Jemana and I hit it off, and we had breakfast together. And out of that breakfast came a positioning, a shift from, instead of fighting against poverty, Robin Hood would change their messaging and fight for New Yorkers. Now, obviously we're fighting poverty, but in the spirit of fighting for New Yorkers, you basically eliminate the poverty fatigue because people always want to fight for something, not against something. So the shift was, the strategic proposition was Robin Hood doing the greatest amount of good for the world's greatest city. And that's kind of where Robin Hood's efforts go when it comes to messaging out to the world. And the truth is, I was amazed when I first got there that Robin Hood takes care of over 200 different charities in the 5 boroughs. It was only until Hurricane Sandy when we started reaching out to New Jersey and Connecticut and Long Island. But other than disaster relief, which we're not in the business of because it's a different model for us, we take care of the 5 boroughs. So this love letter to New York about how we're all New Yorkers deep inside, and Robin Hood is kind of the caretaker of the 9 million most important people on the planet. That is a really interesting place to go for the organization. I mean, before I put the messaging out to the world, well, to New York, which some people think is the world, I tested it. So I got potential donors. Don't ask me why they were available. People that are very wealthy to come to qualitative research, and all of this messaging was put in front of them. That video that we showed in the event downstairs, that was shared with them, and they were all just completely moved by it. There's this untapped local pride that Robin Hood is embracing and activating and saying, you're a New Yorker, you're smart, you're impatient, you're relentless, you never give up, and you got a big heart, and you look out for your neighbors. So clearly, in the financial services sector, we have a lot of wealthy people that give money because they're hedge fund traders or they're, equity traders. That's very, very positive. But then when you tell them, and you're a badass New Yorker, it puts a lot more lead in their pencil. They feel like, hey, I could be Robert De Niro. I'm from this great town called New York. To further the question, I presented it to the board of directors, and it was unanimously embraced, and obviously our staff, and then we put it out into the streets and on the airwaves throughout New York last summer. We basically planted the campaign on the streets of New York to kind of get the buzz around our benefit. So on May 13th, we had 5,000 people at the Jacob Javits Center for our annual fundraising event. And we had our second largest record-breaking tally of $80.5 million that night. So all the research indicates that campaign pushed everybody towards hitting that big goal. One of the things we came up against was, Robin Hood has interests in, may have interests in the next 5 years to take our business model outside New York. So the question put to me by the board was, well, if we're fighting poverty like a New Yorker and we're trying to solve poverty in New Orleans, does it still work? And it works perfectly because people from New Orleans want a New Yorker in there to fix the problem. For all the reasons I mentioned earlier, we get the job done. So it's a really good idea that exports very, very well. But I mean, local pride, of course. I mean, anybody from Bangor, Maine, and that wants to look after their own and have incredible. I mean, I know people from Maine have incredible inner fortitude, and they're seaworthy and crusty, and they can take a lot, very thick skin. So I would imagine, yeah. But for some reason, I've spent my whole life in New York. I just assume it's exclusive to New York. But that's my New York obsession. Obviously the message has to be emotional. So what are the emotional triggers to people that you're trying to motivate? Is it? I think it's always very personal. Like, what's in it for me? The human condition is, at the end of the day, what's in it for me. So even though I'm being philanthropic and I'm being selfless, at the same time, there has to be some kind of emotional payout for my own self. So, you just have to figure out, if it's in China or whether it's in New Orleans or whether it's in, West Africa. You got to figure out what is the trigger that gets people excited. Like charity water. As a person or any place around the world, you can actually help build a well, so you can help this village thrive and live a better life. Is, I'm sure, very universal. So it's hard to answer that question because I just don't know what I'm solving for. This particular project had a very specific objective with a very specific audience. So I think this idea is exportable, but I think people just have to double check to make sure what we're trying to get their audience to do.